Well, welcome everyone, both on Facebook Live and on Zoom, to this evening's Saturday Sabbath service at the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light. Just a few minutes before 5 o'clock, we will begin 5 o'clock. This evening's service is entitled Understanding the Mysteries of Huna, Healing, Prayer, and Miracles. And I'm Reverend Robin Richardson. And because of our wonderful goddess here, she was able to play this crystal harp that you were able to hear. I wanted to let you know and show it to you. We did get requests from Facebook Live to let everyone know what it was and also to play it in the meantime while we were correlating both Facebook and Zoom links to get it to work together. So this is a crystal harp. Crystal, as you know, has been revered in indigenous religions, and they have used it for healing in many different ways. It is a storage for both energy, thoughts, and produces miraculous, beautiful healing potential. So here, I will show you that this is keyed in the frequency of 432. 432 has been held by the mystery schools, and is even in science, they will tell you that the frequency of 432 is the supposed sound of Om going through the cosmos. But it is a mathematical frequency. The Pyramid of Giza and the King's Chamber is keyed to that frequency, as well as the stratosphere in Earth. So it does hold some sacredness and some healing. So this is keyed in 432, but it's being played on crystal, which is a beautiful, wondrous, let's say, transmitter. So may it transmit it into you, into your heart, your mind, and your soul as you listen to these beautiful frequencies. So welcome everyone. Right on time. This is God speaking to us.
I did that.
Isn't it beautiful? So may the forces of nature and God and earth all be with us in this beautiful ceremony today. Again, I'm going to welcome everyone both on Zoom and on Facebook Live. We are welcoming everyone in person. Our formal public opening with the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light is July 12th, but we have been holding these services for the few that would like to come and participate, but we'll have our full opening in July 12th from there on after, and hopefully everyone will be welcome into this house of divine love and source, and will be able to commune again. So I am Robin Richardson, and I welcome you, and I welcome the beautiful waters that have now decided exactly at the stroke of 5 o'clock to be with us. And that is very apropos, because at the end of this service, we're going to be utilizing the water and showing you how that is manna related to what Jesus was doing, and use that as a beautiful prayer for ourselves and the world. So it is absolutely perfection that we have the divine thunder and the water literally raining down upon us as we conduct the service. And you'll see why that is so very important. So I welcome everyone, and I'll start the service now with all of the beautiful roaring of the thunder, the electricity. And let's just take a moment, take a beautiful breath in, take in this beautiful wonder, center, and be part of the divine. Tonight's service, and it's the Saturday Sabbath at the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light. It's entitled Understanding the Mysteries of Huna, Healing, Prayer, and Miracles. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail, but I'll give you the synopsis first. And I have brought some of my beautiful ancient books that I was able to stumble upon with Max Freedom Long. And he was the individual that unlocked the mystery, such as it was that the ancient Kahunas had in the Hawaiian Islands. And I'm going to be going in and showing you why this was so important, because they were able to conduct miracles and they knew how to do so. They can walk on lava, they could heal bones instantaneously, but they were also able to change the future, which I found was just amazing. And these principles that the ancient Hawaiians had were held in secret until the missionaries got there, and the Hawaiians were utilizing this. And what happened is they suppressed this ancient knowledge. And Max Freedom Long, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on how he unlocked that. But he really is the source. And I wanted to clarify this, because we have a lot of the New Age movement and a lot of the Kahunas today, and they're talking about the ancient lore. But really, a lot of the Kahunas, even when Max Freedom Long came to the Hawaiian Islands there in the late 1800s and 1920s, a lot of them had been on the other side of the veil. They had already left. And so even the native Hawaiians had lost their secret of Huna. And Huna is Max Freedom Long's name for this ancient system. And we need to know that. But because of him, he was able to cobble together, piece together, and divine the secret code that the ancient Hawaiians had. And we're going to go even into the source of that. So I really want to show everyone where all the Huna came from. And it literally was Max Freedom Long who pieced everything together when he went to the Hawaiian Islands. And this is one of his original books. And I was really lucky that I was able to get this book when I was only 15 years old. And this is his original book. And so you can see how old it is. And I was able to start to read this when I was 15. And I want you to see that he published this, it was in Los Angeles, 1948. So he had an original, another little pamphlet before that, but this was the first, let's say, when you disseminate knowledge, this was the frontier, the forerunner of all the Huna that you know today. And it was because of his persistence, and he was able to trace the root words. And I'm going to be able to show you that. And I encourage everyone to go ahead and get a copy of this. It is called The Secret Science Behind Miracles. You can get, I'm sure, a new copy of it now. I just stumbled upon it. And then there's another book that I would like to tell everyone about. And that is The Secret Science at Work. And this is also by Max Freedom Long. And this is, let's see, The Secret Science at Work, New Light on Prayer. So this one was published a few years later in 1953. And these two books are the seminal books on Huna. So everyone, I really want to have you go to the source first. And then when we look at some of the newer Hunas or the Kahunas on Hawaii, then we understand where the source is coming from. So it's always best to go to the source first. And then you can accumulate all the rest of the knowledge from there. But as an introduction to what Huna is, I have wrote a little thing, and I'd like to kind of start off with that. And then I'm going to go into beautiful, in-depth understanding of how Huna is a workable art that we can utilize because we are the divine sparks. Jesus was taught these same type universal laws, and he taught them to his disciples. And I went into on another sermon, you'll see it on YouTube, but in the Jesus Connection in the Mystery Schools, and you'll see that he was teaching his disciples, and it wasn't just 12. So each of the 12 had 10 under them. So there was many more disciples that were both obvious and hidden that he was teaching and instructing. So he was teaching these types of universal laws to his disciples, which then allowed them to be able to go ahead and perform some of the miracles. So I will also go into in-depth detail to the connections both with Hermes, with this knowledge in Egypt, and in tandem, 4 years later when I was 19, I was able to get hold of this book, The Lost Continent of Moon. And this is by Colonel James Churchward. And I bring this up here because it goes in absolute tandem to Max Freedom Long's book. And he will tell you that there were tablets that he has found unearthed by Rishi in India that are 5,000, 10,000 years old that speak of Lemuria and Atlantis, and went into in-depth detail with this wonderful Rishi that was able to tell him how the Lemurians had their original religion, where they were really spiritual and espoused love. The same thing that the ancient Hawaiians do. He's able also to show you all the migration routes. And what he was able to tell you is that he believed that the Hawaiian Islands are the remnants of Lemuria. So this is what Max Freedom Long didn't have when he was doing his book. The Colonel James Churchward had that, and these two individuals didn't know each other. So I stumbled upon Max Freedom Long's book first. I understand exactly what he was talking about, the three selves, and I'll go into detail on that. He's wondering where that came from. He knows that you've got some Egyptian, you have some of this ancient, it's being taught in ancient mystery schools, but Colonel James Churchward actually has the other key to this. And so he's telling us and is able to show with us these ancient stones that have the Lemurian symbols and is able to interpret them. Welcome, welcome. welcome. This is the goddess hour. Triune with the waters. This is beautiful. So we have beautiful goddess women here today in person, as well as I'm sure online here. And so I'm going to be able to intertwine for you. Colonel James Churchward is giving us the background that Max Freedom Long did not have. And I will show you that I believe that the Hawaiian Islands, and you'll see this, and this is not channeled material. These are literal stone glyphs that Colonel James Churchward was gifted to be able to make the rubbings of that were 5,000 and 10,000 years old. And so we know from the ancient Lemurian stones, glyphs, that they believe that's where Lemuria was. And so then the Hawaiian Islands are the remnants of Lemuria. And if that's the case, and you'll see that their religion, and I think that next month I will go into the Lemurian language, because this is the source, the fountain of all that is for the last 35,000 years. And I will go into that, but I wanted to give you the key in the same kind of sequence I uncovered this. Max Freedom Long's, what were the ancient Hawaiians doing? How could they perform literal miracles? And you're going to see that he unlocked what they were doing. And I'm going to teach you what he was doing. And if you feel so compelled, you can buy the books and go into more detail. The other link now is that the Rishi has these beautiful stone glyphs that it was their library. They were the custodians of. And he was able to give Colonel James Churchward the rubbings and then teach him this lost art. There were only 5 or 6 people in the world at the time in the 1920s that still retained the knowledge of how to interpret the esoteric understanding of these glyphs and symbols. And then Colonel James Churchward, bless his heart, was able to write a series of books, and he will show you what they are and interpret it for you. So there's 5 or 6 of his books with the glyphs and the symbols. And you're going to see that they both intertwine. So what we might be having, and that's what I wanted to bring forth, is what Max Freedom Long uncovered was basically more knowledge and understanding of the Lemurian religion. And so when we talk of the Da Vinci Code, this is way older than the Da Vinci Code. So we're talking 35 to 50,000 years ago. And it was hidden, and you'll see how Max Freedom Long uncovered this knowledge. And it was, on the shoulders of this wonderful white psychologist that was there in the Hawaiian Islands, that he was even able to be gifted all the knowledge that he had undertaken throughout his life before he died. So let me kind of just start here with what we're going to be doing. And we welcome David. Now we've got the 3 triune goddesses. We had to have one male force here, but you missed the lightning and the thunder just at 5 o'clock. And then it started raining, and you're going to see why that is really so important, because as above, so on earth, that's what we're going to do with the universal laws that the Hawaiians taught us how to both heal, bless, and literally bring that forth in our own lives in the world. And that's what we're going to be closing with. So I think you'll really like that. So the rain is absolutely just splendid right now. So for everyone online and here, just as a little synopsis, in case you didn't get our flyer, I'm going to explain to you what the Huna is. So Huna may be called a philosophy or a system of psychology because it contains elements of philosophy, science, and religion. The ancient Hawaiian Kahunas, or shamans, as we would term them to be, guarded the secrets of their esoteric knowledge of how to perform healing and miracles closely. Long before Freud and long before the Da Vinci Code, right? But long before Freud, they understood that there were three selves and that they must work in harmony together in order to enact amazing feats. They called the low self Unihippili, which we today understand as the subconscious, and which needs to be instructed. They called the middle self Uhane, which we understand today as the conscious self, because it has the ability to reason and uses logic. They called the high self Aumakua. I love that. Think about the very interesting, right? Which we understand today as the superconscious and has direct connection to source. This high self was the older, utterly trustworthy parental spirit that needed to be asked before it could intervene to help. Think of it almost like a guardian angel. All three selves represent the divine trinity. That's why I was so excited we've got the three beautiful women. And I'm letting you know, we've got the three lights, and the triune experience you'll see is fundamental in all religions. And there's a reason for that, because it's based on universal laws. But even when we're going through this, think of the three, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, low self, middle self, and high self. So even as I start to speak of this, you're going to start to allow these other religions to come forth and see why that triune force is so miraculous. All three selves represent this divine trinity. And when in perfect communication with each other, and that's the key, they can perform what we would today call miracles. The Kahunas use mana, or in other philosophies, you would call it vital life force. Some other religions would call it nous, to direct energy to mend broken bones, walk on hot lava, as well as heal the body, mind, and spirit. The Huna tenet, and this is what they live by, is to make amends, forgive, and live a life where you do not cause hurt to others. How beautiful is that? So what you're wanting to do and understand is the basic element here is no hurt, no sin. And I read this so long ago, but when I thought about that, that is exactly what Jesus was trying to tell us. And he was even saying, think pure thoughts, only pure thoughts. You see this? Say only beautiful, wonderful things. You have forgiveness. And this is what the Huna tenets are. And I'm going to show you that I truly believe that Jesus was taught these same tenets. And that upon the cross, and that's maybe will be next month's service, that he was taught in the mystery schools, the ancient Lemurian religion, which is what Huna was. And his last words on the cross were actually can be translated into Lemurian. And it doesn't say, God, you have forsaken. It says, darkness is covering my face in ancient Lemurian script. He never said, God, you have forsaken me. He never went to that weak point. So that's what was so beautiful. And Colonel James Churchill will show you with the Lemurian language and translate it and to show you that I truly believe that Jesus was taught this ancient Hawaiian knowledge. And it was through the mystery schools. So let's kind of go into a little bit of detail. Who was this Max Freedom Long, the story behind that. But we're going to open up with our New Age equivalent to show you that these are the tenets, and I absolutely embrace them. So when you have the Huna prayers, and what most people will think of a Huna is the I love you, I'm sorry, and please forgive me. But doesn't that actually correlate with living a life with no hurt, no sin? Living a hurtless life. And that is what we're instructed to do in almost all the religions. But if this is what I'm going to try to show you, this is the source of it all. And it's absolutely breathtakingly beautiful in its simplicity. And all the Lemurians were taught this. And when they went forth to both Atlantis and Egypt and India and the Americas and everywhere and founded those colonies, Colonel James Churchward, because he understood the Lemurian script and the glyphs, was able to interpret them all over the world in all the other religions. Isn't that fantastic? So what is precious is that the Huna was the Lemurian religion, taught to truly love, truly forgive, right? And to hold these tenets of no hurt, no sin, but then was able to give the people, how do you perform miracles? Even Jesus said, these things I do, ye can do these and greater, did he not? The ancient Hawaiians could do that. They could mend broken bones. They could walk on hot lava. They could change the future. Do you see this? And so Jesus was instructed in that knowledge. He was a divine son, but he was taught some of these same tenets. And so would it not behoove us to follow his breadcrumbs and to learn what Jesus was taught? See? So that's, yes, Manacromes. Yes, David. I love it. With the rain, right? So I went into a little bit of detail. You guys missed it a little bit, but just as a brief interlude here to kind of catch you up. Max Freedom Long, and this is, I'll give you the history from these two books. There's two books. I'll show them to you guys, but again, for the people here that are listening online, the first book is The Secret Science Behind Miracles by Max Freedom Long. And this is where he will show you and give you the history of the whole story of how he went to the Hawaiian Islands. He met this wonderful elderly white psychologist who was one of the very first people over there to the Hawaiian Islands after Cook found them, and then the missionaries were starting to come and suppress the ancient knowledge. And so I'll give you the story. I think I have enough time to at least give you a synopsis. But then this was the first book, right? When he's unlocking everything. And the second book is The Secret Science at Work, a few years later, where he will start to show you the workable magic of the Kahunas. And he will go into detail on this. So I want to kind of tell you how he's doing this, and it will make sense when you unlock all of this. So Max Freedom Long goes over to the Hawaiian Islands. He's intrigued. He stumbles upon this white psychologist who's been there like 50 years. And they're very intrigued, and they call him the White Kahuna. And, so Max Freedom Long kind of, befriends him. They're both interested. How are these Hawaiians walking on lava? But they won't tell anyone, and they have, the ancient Hawaiians had really good reason to be fearful to share any of their secret information or lore with us whites, right? Because they would have associated with the missionaries who suppressed everything. And they were outlawing the ancient system of Huna. They didn't want them to practice this. And what was interesting is that when the missionaries came over, the Hawaiians accepted the religion of, the Bible of Jesus, because it was so in alignment with the tenets. And the difference was they accepted it wholeheartedly, but when the missionaries were praying, they weren't able to heal bones. They weren't able to change the future. And they were, wait a minute, what happened? And so they started still practicing the ancient Huna lore. You see, going to their kahunas, and were able to have the bones repaired, were able to change the future and walk on hot lava. So the story is this, to give it to you in a nutshell. So Max Freedom Long, this is in this book, he hides. He knows that these kahuna are doing their secret, ceremonial things and walking on hot lava. He goes, I don't know if I believe this, but I want to see it. So he's hiding and he sees them doing this. And he's seen that they're doing, certain weaves or certain ceremonial things. And he's watching them walk on hot lava with no burns. He's going, whatever they're doing, I want to learn. Can you see this young man going, they are really able to do these miraculous things, whatever they're doing. I want to know what it is they're doing. So that's this inquiry that he has. And that's when he gets in, in connection with this older white psychologist. He bequeaths Max Freedom Long all of this knowledge because he knows he's dying. And he hasn't been able to unlock all of the knowledge yet. He can't do it. He's learned some of the tricks, but of course they're not talking to the whites. They're fearful, right? And then a lot of the ancient kahunas at that point in time, he died off. And they never gave the full knowledge to anyone. So this is the sad part of this. So when the older psychologist dies, he gives all of this knowledge and this papers and his research to Max Freedom Long. He goes back home and he's very troubled. He knows there is something going on. He can see it. And he's going, how would I ever piece this together? So when you talk about, the God code, when we talk about the Da Vinci Code, tracing the code, he's troubled. He's, praying, he's thinking about this, and all of a sudden he comes to the full realization it has to be embedded in the language. So even though the ceremonial aspects has been lost, the ancient knowledge has still got to be embedded in the words of the language of the Hawaiians, because it was a very simple language, very few words. And so he starts to piece together all the knowledge, because he's already got a baseline from this white psychologist, and then starts to delve into the understanding of the words and trying to put them together. So here, I'm going to be kind of speaking to you from the secret science behind, this is the secret science at work that I'm going to go through, because I've given you a little bit of the background of the first book. So we do have this ancient code. It's embedded in the Hawaiian language. And this is how Max Freedom Long started to unravel and find the secret. So Kahuna means keeper of the secret. That's his name for this, because the original name of these ancient practices has been lost. Max Freedom Long was seeking to restore this lost knowledge, this way of life, such as it was taught not only by the Kahunas, but by Jesus himself and by many of the great initiates in the past and even today in the mystery schools. And we've done other sermons on the mystery schools. And I've been a Rosicrucian for 40 years, so I could have done some of that kind of prior research. And if you want, you can find that on some of the YouTube channels with the Cosmic Center. So breaking this code to find the true light was his quest. And he wants to give it to the world, to be known and to be used by all who have eyes to see and ears to hear. I made the connection that I truly believe the Hawaiian Islands were the remnants of Lemuria, right? So the Christian missionaries arrived in Hawaii in 1820, and they tried to eradicate all the ancient Hawaiian beliefs. They actually had legends of the Garden of Eden, very similar, the flood, and even Noah and the whale. And that's why they so heartily embraced this new religion, the Christianity, right? And it was only when they embraced it, they could see the missionaries actually could perform the miracles. They were questioning that, wait a minute, I'll go back to my own ancient ways. So Colonel James Churchward had written a book, it was Max Freedom Long, wrote a book before the first one. And it was like a pamphlet. He was kind of producing it, publicizing it like in the 30s and 40s. And there was this W. Renard Stewart who read it. And he was out of England. And he found, and he wrote, because back then we didn't have the internet. So he has to write by snail mail, right? And to the Stewart. And they're talking back and forth, and this is what was found between the two. So Stewart reads this pamphlet that Max Freedom Long wrote about the symbols, you know, some of the words, and he's trying to piece things together. And so this Ronald Stewart goes, wait a second, I remember this. I found a piece of this, but it was in Africa. He writes Max Freedom Long, and this is what he tells him. He had found a small tribe of Berbers, and you'll go back, there's all kinds of stuff on these Berbers and the ancient knowledge they held, living in the Atlas Mountains. Very interesting Atlas, right? Atlantis. In Africa, across from Spain, who understood this ancient code. Because Max Freedom Long was trying to break this code, saying, does anyone know, has anyone heard of this? And so what this Ronald Stewart is saying is that in Africa, there was a woman called the Uhane, and it wasn't a Berber word. And it was a variation when he started to read what Max Freedom Long was talking about in the ancient words and the vowels. It's a variation of the Kahuna Wahine, which means woman of Kahuna. So he realizes that this woman that he's studying with is actually got some of this ancient knowledge, and her title said woman of Kahuna. So he was able to receive the beginning of the instructions. He got himself kind of adopted in with this woman's daughter, became like a blood, son, and she was instructing him in this ancient lore. And then there was a warring tribe, and a bullet was a stray bullet, and it killed her. So Ronald Stewart was only able to get the beginning of the instructions of this ancient lore. But when he saw Max Freedom Long's pamphlet, he goes, I know where this came from. And old yellow pages, he looks at it, he says, that's where this is. That's what I was studying. So he's able to piece together for Max Freedom Long part of the journey. Because you see this older white psychologist has got all this knowledge, and then this other individual in England has got another piece of it. So Max Freedom Long is reaching out, trying to uncover, and each piece is the piece of the puzzle, putting this together. So he saw that there's this sacred language and that it was Polynesian. So now we know that even in Africa, do you see if that would make sense if it's Lemuria? The Lemurians had went and founded Egypt. They founded, India. They were sending colonies out to all parts of the world. So they would have went into Africa. They would have went into Egypt. You see this? So now, also used in the Near East, and looking at the Old Testament accounts, you see the miracles that Moses and Aaron enacted in Egypt. Those same type of stories, you'll start to see what are they doing. And when you read the Old Testament, when you understand what the Huna are doing, you'll see remnants in that. You'll see they're doing the same types of things. Jesus performed miracles and taught his disciples the Huna, or mystery school teachings, so that they could perform miracles, and he would teach them in secret and understand the truths, unlock the meaning from translating the language of the root words, is how Max Freedom Long was able to now uncover some of this ancient magic. And this is how he was able to understand its three selves, and that the ancient Hawaiians understood this writing. The three selves have to work and be in communication with each other to be integrated, to be able to enact the miracles. And that was the difference between, and the Catholics have a lot of this right, guys, with the prayers, the forgiveness. They have a lot of this right. they're not realizing that it's the person, the low self, middle self, and high self. But they have a lot of the rituals right that the ancient Hawaiians were doing. So the Unapaleli is the subconscious. It's secretive and it works silently and carefully. It can be stopped by guilt or fear of punishment. So think about what the Catholics are doing. You have to forgive, you've got to go to the priest, right? The problem is it's taking it elsewhere. This is something you have to do work within you. Because Jesus said, these things I do, ye can do these and greater, right? So you have to work it within you, not give it elsewhere. So you have the subconscious. Now think of that as the low self. That's just easier for the Western mind to understand. The niha is, it adheres closely to another spirit. That's part of even in the word, how you're decoding the word of the Hawaiian word. Then you have the conscious mind self in there. It acts as a servant to it, accepts orders from it, but sometimes it's stubborn and refuses to obey. That's the difference between Christianity. Do you see? They understood a lot of this, even in the Bible. The difference is that we have to get rid of the guilt. That's where, please forgive me. I love you. I am sorry. And this is how the ancient Hawaiians were able to enact unbelievable miracles. What they were saying is that in order to get rid of guilt, you have to be sorry, but that's a repentant state to make it right. How do you make it right? You see? And then that's where you receive true forgiveness. And then you no longer carry the guilt. And they would do this with families, with both all the generations between the two families. The Kahunas would do this. And also because they were so gifted, if grandma had died and she was holding a grudge and energy was coming through here, they were able to literally make it right, have the person address the wrong, okay, say what it was, and the other person had to make it right. And then you get rid of the guilt. You no longer hold that. So your low self can then rise up and communicate with the high self, which is the guardian spirit, which is the trustworthy, older, higher self that has direct connection with source itself. So that's the whole process of the three selves. You have this mental self. This is the middle self. It's logical. It talks to us. In India, they call it the monkey mind, right? So you want to put that aside. You have to go. Max Freedom Long was saying that the low self, and think about this, is generally, you know how you're very open when you're 8 and under? You're just like this beautiful vessel of subconscious, unconscious self. That's trusting. And remember, Jesus said, bring the little children unto me. When you're pure of heart and pure of spirit is when you can do these miracles. But no guilt, no sin. You're absolutely pure and you have a heart that's open and free, just like a child. And so what Max Freedom Long is uncovering is that you have to work with the low self, the pure childlike self that has now went into a situation where it no longer has the guilt. It has addressed all of the wrongs. So it now can feel and have direct communion with the high self. And when you send that energy with a vital life, you can take it from the waters, you can take it from the breath, and you bring it up from the low self that's now got a free, clear passage to the higher self. That's when you send it up to source itself, and it comes back as rain. Blessings, do you see? Upon you, your descendants, upon the world. And that's how this miracle that they were teaching and doing with the Kahunas were working with their people. Pila is the independent spirit. The subconscious spirit is very much tied to the conscious mind. We have these etheric bodies, if you will, and they like doubles, or you can call it the etheric self, and they have these cords that are attached. So think of the low self, the middle self, and the high self. And you have these etheric doubles, and they're interconnected, and they're receiving mana, all of them, from your breath. You see this? From the waters, from the food, from the physical, and you're using this mana as a charge, and you're supercharging it to enact these beautiful prayers. And that actually has an energy, and that's what gets encoded and done. And that's where the kahuna were able to perform these feats, because they knew how to do this. They were doing it. They were instructed how to do this. The Uhane is a spirit that talks. Again, that's the mental self, the middle self. It hides things such as a complex and can be weakened. So then now think of Freud. When you have all these complexes and neuroses, what were the ancient Hawaiians doing? Addressing the wrong. If you wrong this person, you explain it, you tell them, and then you make it right for the other person. And that's true repentance, when you have made the wrong right. And then you can absolve yourself of the guilt because you have made it right, correct? Now you have freedom of communication between all three selves. And that's the fountain of both mana, the vital life force, your thoughts, going to source and having it release. You see that? And then fall back down and perform the miracles. So mana is the vital life force. It's created automatically again by the food, right? The air that we breathe. Our other selves can step this energy up in vibrations. It's a vibratory rate. And that's what we're doing with our conscious self. We're inhaling the air, we're having the food, we're utilizing this energy, and then we're taking our conscious mind and uplifting it, raising it to a higher vibration. The three selves are connected by cords, and they all use this mana. You see this? This charge, and you're supercharging it with thought and intention. Water is a symbol of mana. It's again generated from the low self by the food and the air, and also is a symbol of just plain water itself. But water raised to an overflowing amount from a fountain, and that's accumulated by the surcharge of the low self to the high self. And so Max Freedom Long was realizing that when he was unlocking the words, they had two different names for mana, and he was able to decode it and realize that there was regular mana that was just water, like the physical aspects, right? And then water that was raised up in vibratory rate. You see this? Even think of Aaron, Moses with the staff. Think of what they're doing from the Old Testament. They're doing these kinds of things. If you had full knowledge, you were able to do that. The vital life force of the high self taken from the low self by the connecting cord was symbolized by clouds and mist made up of droplets of water. So that's the symbol he now knows he's able to decode with all the ancient Hawaiian script. And this is where, when I said, we have the droplets of water and rain. Isn't that beautiful? That's it, like, I love it. We can utilize, that's energy. Do you see that? That's the, energy coming into earth. You can take that in and utilize it for good. So the symbol here is the mist, the water droplets coming down. When they fall down in the form of a fine rain, that symbolized the return of the vital life force, which had been transformed to carry the blessing. Of the high self, right, that had the connection to source, as it fell on the middle in the low selves and to everyone else. Do you see that? So literally it's a fountain, but we have that same type of fountain here on earth. You have the water, you have the sunshine. Do you see that? And it's lifted up into a mist, it becomes the clouds and it falls back to earth. That's that same kind of cycle. We just have to work, and literally it's a holy communion and communication with our low self, middle self, and high self. Max Freedom Long was also able to uncover in his research that what the tree and vine symbols meant, which is beautiful. The roots is the low self. Think of the tree as the low self, that's the subconscious self, right? It needs to be instructed. The trunk and the branches, that's the middle self. The leaves is the high self. And the sap that runs through the tree is the vital life force. That's the mana. Do you see that? Invigorating and giving nourishment to all. And when it works beautifully in communication, you grow. See that? And Max Freedom Long also wrote, this is a beginner's book. And what makes me think of that is because you have the trees, but growing into light, that's another beautiful book. It's like a primer to understand the Huna rules and how you can operate them for healing. And so, I'll put all those links for everyone online, but you can see that. And there was another book that I loved. This is not by Max Freedom Long. It's a newer book. And John knew this writer and was able to give this to me, but it's by Ingrid Hoffman. And this was a beautiful primer, again, something that people, if you like this is something that you can buy and start to study, if that's something that you feel so compelled to do. So what I would like to do, and we have just a little bit of time here, is to talk to you about how could we work this? How might we use Huna in our lives? And so the connection here is with the rain. Can you see even that we have the natural elements? Now that you understand, you have to have the low self. That's the subconscious self. And I think most of you know that I'm a hypnotherapist. And one of the reasons I became a hypnotherapist is because I understood what the ancient kahuna were using. And they were using hypnosis. They just didn't call it that. But I want you to think this is how they were able to both do the Huna prayer forgiveness. You have to make it right. You have to address it. You get rid of the guilt and the complexes to make that. The connection is for you, right? If I'm so riddled with guilt, then I can't even get to the low self, the pure self, the trusting self to be able to release and connect to the higher self, right? So that's why the Catholics were giving everyone the, say your Holy Mary prayer beads, 40 times and do this or whatever. So they had some of these elements, but they weren't realizing or teaching their people, it's you that has to do that. Do you see that? So what the ancient kahunas were doing, they would have, let's say, multi-generations of families come in. And if Susan had a problem with Auntie, Agatha, whatever, this one would have to talk to each other, address it, understand it. What can I do? I can feel your hurt, you see? What is the Huna tenet? No hurt, no sin. I've committed a sin by hurting you. How can I make that right? Figure out a way, talk to the person, make it right. How can I make that up to you? What can I do? You see? And once that's paving the path for each of the people to go to source. Because if each person holds a hurt, they can't get through. You see, they can't access their lower self in its pure state. It's pure faithful state with pureness, you see? Because it's that state that goes to the higher self. And that's why hypnosis works so wonderful. Because you can get to that state in a trance state. What the ancient kahunas were doing, they knew all this, but sometimes they would have to kind of trick the mental self, that's the middle self. They would they're utilizing vital life force, so they may have an egg. And someone committed a wrong or did something, and they may crack the egg and do something to say, now drink this. They're trying to satisfy the middle self, trick it so they can get access to the lower self. So then that truly believes this is happening, it's being instructed, that you can then reach the higher self. So they're utilizing a way to get rid of the complexes. They're instructing it and using this in such a way, even with the ceremonies. Think about all the religions, the ceremonial stuff. What is that doing? That's setting an intention, right? It's instructing the subconscious. Even if you work with a lot of the indigenous people, what are they doing? Drumming. You see this chanting. Think of the Gregorian chants. What's that doing? It's putting you into a trance-like state. A trance-like state is just a relaxed state. That's all it is. Everyone goes into a trance-like state when you relax and daydream. When you wake up from a dream and you're there and everything's wonderful, you kind of remember your dream, right? That's a trance state. So that's what a lot of the religions are already doing. That's what we do when you listen to beautiful music. When you say prayers or petitions over and over and over again, affirmations. It's that chanting that brings you into that relaxed state where you can access the knowledge, you see more information, and also access the subconscious part that's able to connect with the higher self. So that's the Hawaiians were able, and I want to go through this before I'm looking at my time here. They understood the three selves. They understood the subconscious. They knew it had to be instructed. They knew that you had to get past this middle self that had held all of the guilt, the monkey mind. It was talking. It was wanting everything to be rational, right? So it was an impediment. So they had to get rid of the middle self, put it over here, right? And in a way, think about that. If this person's hurting this person and they make amends, if they stole $10, then give the $10 back. They're making it right. Then the middle self is appeased, isn't it? It's made everything right. So then that can settle. So the low pure self, the childlike self, addresses the higher self. Do you see that? What's happening? So that's where you'll see in a lot of these ceremonies, that's why that does work. The Kahuna were also schooled in vital life force. How do you charge this mana? Do you see that's the supercharging? And that's with thought, intention. They're utilizing breath. And in the ancient mystery schools and a lot of the religions, you'll hear you do the beautiful sacred breaths, right? That is mana, that is vital life force. They know that even from a scientific viewpoint. You inhale, I guess my son is talking about this runner that's utilizing all the different breaths to be able to perform like miracles for running and staying in ice. It's this ancient breath work that has amazing capabilities, but it's energy. You're breathing in, but also you have physical mana from the water, right? But from the physical foods we're eating, from the things that we're exposed to. And even is Jesus not instructing us to think pure thoughts, only do pure things? That creates an energy that's affecting us with our auric levels. Do you see this with the etheric levels? And we have these are, and have you ever been connected to someone you love? That's this etheric cord that you have between them. They work with this. The ancient Hawaiians understood the etheric cords, and they could take a thought, send it with vital life force charge to help heal someone remotely. So they knew this etheric work. Do you see this? And that's what the New Age now movement is into. We can validate it with Acrylian photography, with science. We now know this exists. We are a walking aura with electromagnetic currents of energy. Do you see this? But they're able to utilize that with instructions. So they knew this way before science knew it. And that's where you get this. It's a philosophy of science and religion. It's a whole, it encompasses all. So what I'd like to do is I think I've made the connection with Lemuria, with the ancient Hawaiian Islands, with Colonel James Churchward, that if the Hawaiians, because remember, they the waters around the ancient Hawaiian Islands were very unnavigable, and people didn't even make entrance in there to the late 1700s. So they were really remote, and they would have kept, this is Lemuria, they would have kept more of the ancient Lemurian knowledge than the rest of the world, because you've got wars going, you have one civilization conquering another, burning their books. Now, the Hawaiian Islands were unnavigable. The waters there swirled, and it was very hard even for ships to get in. So they would have, if this is ancient Hawaiian, you know, the Hawaiian Islands from Lemuria, and that those were the tips left, they would have held on to a more pure state because it hasn't been so merged in with other religions, right? So they would have at least kept a pure state of what the ancient Lemurians would have had. And that, I think that's really important to understand. So that's, if it is ancient Lemuria, which I do believe it is, they would have kept more of the sacred teachings that were pure. Now, I'm sure they would have denigrated from Lemuria, because that was 35 to 50,000 years ago. And you're talking about the 1800s, but it would have kept at least some more of the pure tenets than a lot of the rest of the religions worldwide that would have been, you know, so submerged in wars and being taken over and conquered. So I believe that you have Lemuria, the ancient Hawaiians, understanding this pure knowledge. It's a workable magic to create miracles in your life. They went to Egypt. They went to India. They went to Africa, right? We even the Berbers retained some of this. So you have Thoth, you have, you know, Atlantis. And so you're having all these connections, and I wanted to put that together for you as you read about this, why it is very important for you to understand that it might have come from Lemuria, because that's the fountainhead itself. But this is a Huna prayer that I'd like for us to close with, and we're going to have some water, and we're going to supercharge it with divine intentions, with purity, accessing the low self, right? But I'll tell you what it is, and then we'll perform it, and then we'll close the service out. The high priest Hermes, because you can see Hermes is into this too, but I'm going to tell you that that still goes back. Hermes still got the knowledge from Lemuria, do you see? Took his tribe from Atlantis to Hawaii. That would, you know, this is another philosophy on this, where he established the Kahuna tribe and taught the tribe the Huna prayers as follows. First, address your prayer to an angel or a master of your choice. The reason they're saying this, I'm bringing this new age, is so that you can utilize the new age stuff. I love it, but that's why I want you to have the fountain first, the underpinnings. When they say that, all you're doing is you're addressing it to the high self. That's the guardian spirit, right? They're just using it, saying a master of your choice. I just want you to see the terminology. State your request 3 times in positive terms. The reason you're stating your request and using affirmations to do that, because you have to instruct your lower self. That's the subconscious self. You see, that's how you're unlocking that. So that's where affirmations work, but the direct access has to be when you're pure and that the lower self receives it, because it's trusting and it now has no guilt and no sin. Sit with your palms up and say, may the rain of blessings fall. So be it. And repeat this for 30 days. So this is the new age equivalent of that. And we're going to do something special here, because I was able to give you at least some of the knowledge of what we are doing here and how we're unlocking this. So water itself, and think of the Catholic and the communion with Jesus. If you guys come up, I'll give you some of your waters. Remember what the waters represent. Think of Dr. Emoto, and waters are living conscious, and you can imprint them with knowledge. And I wanted to also tell you about this Veda Austin. She's taking pictures of, and she'll show you of informed water. You can inform it with a thought or a picture. And Dr. Emoto was able, you can come in here if they want to be part of this, just so the audience here knows what we're doing.
I don't know which is mad.
Okay.
She didn't play in the heart growing.
Okay. Dr. Emoto was able to show us that thought can be imbued in water and take those crystallized form, right? Love and gratitude. So water is a living entity, if you will, and it can capture those thoughts, right? Even Veda Austin is taking pictures of water in the freezer because she didn't have that expensive microscope, showing a picture even. You see this? Touching it, and it'll literally show you the crystallized form of a picture or whatever it touched. You see this? It's unbelievable. And what was Jesus doing? He was saying communion, right? And he was saying, you are part of me, and using this with water. So this is an element. Think of this as mana, vital life force. But what we're going to do is inform the water first with our affirmation. And so part of this, think of the new age, I am sorry, please forgive me, I love you. You see that? So what I want us to do is even say that and feel it right now, because we're going to clear the middle self and all the guilts and the complexes. And you think of all the people, and if you have hurt them, you say it in your mind. I am sorry. I love you. Please forgive me. See that? Pave the way from getting rid of the middle self, having direct communion now with the low self, the subconscious self. And we're going to put our affirmation in there. This is when we raise the vibratory rate up. And I want us to put it in the water, then we're going to literally drink the water and raise it up with this beautiful, wonderful blessing. I want you to think of healing for you individually, your families, your nation, and the world. It is so in dire need of healing. So let us think of pure healing, pure love. For as we think, it is so. Jesus even said that, right? So I want you to think of pure love, pure healing. You take that thought form and you're going to literally supercharge and embed it into the water. We know now from science that this is so. Take that thought, put it into the water, and now we're going to drink this. Drink it. You're literally drinking your wish, filling it up with your body, accessing your low self. Do you see that? A pure pathway. And literally, I want you to feel right now, you say, God of our hearts, God of our realization, source itself. We come to you with purity of mind, spirit, and soul. Bless us. Bless the world. Heal the world, Lord. We send love to all parts of this world right now. Feel the love coming from your heart, sending it up to the higher self, to the Godhead itself. And beautiful, like rain being absorbed into the clouds, into the etheric matter, to source itself, impregnated with God's source existence. And now see this wish of healing for mankind, healing for the world, healing for our countries, healing for this time in our families and ourselves. And like beautiful raindrops, knowing that that will be done. Love is healing in so many different ways. And feel the love, the renewal, the healing between nations, the healing between family members, the healing between family members in this world and beyond the veil. All love, I am sorry, please forgive me. I love you. And know with instruction up to the source itself, falling like raindrops upon dew upon the grass, source itself, heal earth, heal its inhabitants, heal the winged ones, the two-legged ones, the four-legged ones. Heal all, Lord. Feel it on your low self and extend it through your body that is this beautiful tree with the sap running through it, out into the world. And on a prayer of love, it is done. And we say amen, 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 and amen. And we will close with that, but I'd like to have everyone literally remember that the Hawaiians, when they would come to the islands, they would greet everyone with the leis. And this is love itself. Do you see that? So we will literally close with everyone here with a prayer of love and the aloha. If there's any questions here, I'm going to ask. You can put it on chat. Let's see. Otherwise, I will close and we can talk it here in person. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and close out. Aloha, and if you'd like to put in a donation to keep this lovely center going, I set the link. You go to Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light /donate, and I'm sure your energy and your love would be greatly assisted to keep their mission going forth. And may love and light be granted unto you and yours.